Hi, I'm Sarah, and you're watching 60-Second Sermons. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about a conversation that Jesus has with one of the disciples named Peter, and how this relates to us. So, Jesus and the disciples had met for what's called the Last Supper. And as they're sitting there at the table, Jesus looks at the 12 and he says, "One of you will betray me." And of course, he's talking about Judas, who was going to turn him over to be crucified. But Peter jumps in and he goes, "Lord, I would never. It's not me. I would never." Jesus says, "Peter, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows tomorrow." And Peter is baffled that Jesus said that because he thinks, "Lord, I would never do that, not me." But sure enough, Jesus was taken away later that night, and all the disciples flee, but Peter kind of follows from a distance like he's eavesdropping or spying to see what's happening. And in the courtyard, Peter is asked 3 times, "Aren't you a follower of that man? Don't you know him? Aren't you affiliated with him somehow?" And each time he says, No, I don't know him." And the Bible tells us he wept bitterly. And I think that we can relate to this because anytime that we feel like we've missed an opportunity to tell someone about Jesus, or maybe we have said something we shouldn't, or we've done something that we shouldn't, we feel this guilt and shame. And I can't imagine, what Peter's feeling in that moment. And of course, Jesus was crucified and he rose from the grave 3 days later. But he comes back to the disciples and he sits down with Peter. And you see this in John 21. He says, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter says, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." And he asks him the second time, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter goes, "Lord, of course I love you." And Jesus says, "Shepherd my sheep." And he asks him a 3rd time. He says, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter says, "Lord, you know all things. Surely you know that I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." I think it's really interesting here to think Peter denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times he said, "I don't know you. I don't know him." And then Jesus had to ask Peter 3 times, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" Jesus knew Peter's heart. And I think it's so incredible when you read in 1 John 4, it says love. Those 3 times that love covers a multitude of sins. Those 3 times that Peter said, "No, Lord, I don't know Jesus. I'm not a follower." Jesus took that and he covered them. And that's the same thing that he does with us. 1 John also tells us that perfect love casts out all fear, that fear that Peter was showing when he was too scared to say that he knows Jesus. Perfect love, like Jesus shows us, eliminates all fear. And that is something to rejoice in, friends. Before Jesus left, he gave us a command, and he says, "Go, therefore, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father." And this isn't something that you have to leave, your area to do. We're called to tell the stories, friends. And I pray that we take joy in knowing that we get the opportunity to tell other people about Jesus' love and how perfect it is. Thanks, guys.